I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Thinking Critical. My name is Skip. Got my man, my best comic book friend here, my man Wes. Say what's up to the people, Wes.
What's going on, everybody? Hope you're ready to hear about some mutants and some crazy stuff going on in Krakoa. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Of course, we're talking about the mainline X-Men book, X-Men number 7. This book's got everybody talking, so I figure why not come here and talk about it with you guys as well. We're going to dive straight into it. Orgy between Jean Grey and Cyclops and Wolverine confirmed, Wes?
Sure, certainly feels like it. You know, I remember they hinted back at it when they did the layout of the summer house, and Jean Grey was like the meat and the Sammy between Wolverine and Cyclops, and now they're hinting at it. Certainly, they certainly did here. I believe they also hinted at it in the Fantastic Four X-Men comic, and there's also some hints that Scott and Emma Frost have something going on in that giant size X-Men story as well. So there's definitely things are brewing on Krakoa. Love is brewing. It's in the air. And Krakoa and wherever those portals go, and it feels like Scott and Wolverine and everyone involved is taking advantage.
There's definitely something in the air. I don't know what Krakoa is pumping through its petals. You know, we talked. There's that drug pollen that was being talked about in the Wolverine book. It definitely is, because let me tell you, everybody is enjoying everybody in the nation of Krakoa. Heck, even Krakoa is getting some. Arakko came back.
Beautiful.
So even the island is getting it on. Hey, love for all mutants apparently, because obviously Krakoa is a mutant as well. So we got that angle cooking, and that was all but confirmed in this book. And then, of course, obviously we had the some other things brewing, bigger fish to fry, if you will. Man, we understand that we have the mutant resurrection protocol. It's there. The 5 can bring people back, but we're in this space where some of the people, based off of what happened in House of M, some of the mutants are still depowered, yet they're on Krakoa. And I thought that was interesting that they came to cover it. But for those who still are depowered and actually want to get their powers back, the resurrection protocol can apparently bring them back from a time where they can have their powers back, but they got to go through Apocalypse to get it. Wes, what is going on?
Well, that's what the entire beginning of the comic book is. Scott and Wolverine are having a conversation when they're not, joking about messing around with Jean together, and they're talking about their Crucible and what appears is how mutants are going to regain their power, as far as mutants have lost their abilities. And it's an interesting conversation. You can see that Scott and Wolverine are both very apprehensive about the idea of what the Crucible is. Of course, at that point, you don't know what it is seemingly for different reasons. And like Wolverine wants to know part of it, whatsoever, is what it feels like. And so it was an interesting, conversation as we're setting up to learn about the Crucible. And along the way, there's another scene that was interesting where Scott goes to find Cypher because he's looking for Kurt. He's looking for Nightcrawler, and we see Warlock. Did you notice that? Was that the first time we've seen that character in this series? In
the X-Men, actually, I think
since House of X Powers of 10,
easily. And it's very interesting that he was there, and then it goes back, and then when you flash back to them talking, like with him talking to Doug, aka Cypher, he's gone again.
And then the tree, which of course was them conversating with Krakoa, the eyes have shut, and then of course also in Giant Size X-Men, it feels like they're kind of connecting the two, because in that one we saw the technovirus kind of infecting the egg that was in Storm's mind. So it feels like they have to be connected, because I remember when Cypher first arrived on Krakoa, he touched the leaves, and we saw that technovirus start to spread there as well. And so that part was really interesting, but that is not even anywhere near the most interesting thing on this comic book, because Scott finally finds Nightcrawler, and they're talking together, and they see a view of that big forked tower. Of course, we also saw that in the very first, I believe it was Powers of 10 comic book, and that was 1,000 years in the future, and that was the Tower of Nimrod the Lesser. We know it's some type of organic tower here on Krakoa.
Right.
We kind of learn that if you go into that tower, you will see like the most, whatever you like, maybe whatever the most beautiful version of the world could be to you. At least that's the way I kind of interpret it. What did you think about Kurt's experience in that tower?
That's pretty much what it seemed like. It seemed like it was, and it's interesting because he's kind of one of the only people that we know that can enter it. I mean, since he mentioned, Logan even tried to claw through it and just his adamantium claws couldn't even get through it. So for Kurt to bamf in there and see inside, it seems like there's something to it. Like it's almost fooling people. Like you said, Wes, it's almost the most serene vision or the most fulfilling vision that anybody could have in a place on the island. It may be the pinnacle of what Krakoa can be for you inside of that building. So it's interesting that people aren't allowed to, people aren't able to get in there. There's not a way in, with the exception of how Kurt got in there. But that's definitely how I took it. I thought it was also interesting, speaking of things almost, again, seeming too good to be true, how there was some of those cult-like tendencies from some of the people in there. You had Exodus speaking to the kids, and in that scene where he was talking about, I do like how they built up to it being Scarlet Witch. He was kind of talking around her, and then of course that vision or whatever of her came up, and they're like, oh, pretender. They start covering their ears, like little kids that have been brainwashed. Like when you see this thing, you immediately correlate it with this thing without question. And yeah, the witch, the
boogeyman, or some type of like the thing that you tell your kids, to keep them from going down the water. Like if you go down there alone, kind of like the Candyman or something like that. They're all like they're covering their ears. They're screaming "pretender, pretender," as he tells the story of what she did. She devoured 1,000 mutants, and we learned, those mutants, like you said, are on the island, and one of them is one of the Guthries. I believe her name is Arrow, is her mutant name. And she is going to be the first one, as I understand it, she is the first one to enter the Crucible. And I also think this is the way I read it, this is Kurt's idea of how you can regain your power or be resurrected. He, basically you can't kill yourself, so you have to go through apocalypse. I can't imagine a better, mutant to select to be the one that you have to go through to regain the essence of being a mutant and be reborn better again. So the Crucible basically is, if you are a depowered mutant, you go into the ring of combat with a sword, you challenge Apocalypse, and when you die by the sword, you're resurrected a mutant again with your powers reborn. And it's really frightening just to think of what they're doing there. But when Kurt kind of explains what he's doing, and I want to read this, and it's going to take a little bit, but I just thought it was very well executed. He says, "It's true. We have laws and the foundation of some kind of government, but what was it built on? Hope, anger, inevitability, arrogance. What's at the real center of it?" And that's something I think we've all been asking as readers. And then he goes on, "Consider my faith. I can't help but wonder what happens to our souls when we die." Again, addressing something I think we've all been thinking about as readers. And he continues, "Do they linger waiting for eternity, or do they return to their mortal vessel when that vessel is reborn, as you and I were recently? Am I really me? Are you really you?" And then Slim cuts in. He says, "Gotta be honest, this is the first time I felt like myself in years, Kurt. If this is wrong, I don't want to be right." And then he says, "I understand that still. Think about it. Mortality. If one cannot die, if one is immortal, what lures eternity? I.e., what lures is everlasting life, in the afterlife after you die, with God," because he is a Christian. And it was just very well executed, felt very much in character, a crisis of faith, as you will, because of what Kurt is witnessing on the island, and there's a logical leap that happens at the end of this. And I think it probably bothers some people because of the character that Kurt is, being a devout, Catholic. Along the way, Krakoa is a sovereign nation now. They have their own language. They're developing their own mutant culture. They're isolating themselves from the world. And one of the things that you always get with a unique culture is is a unique religion. And Kurt's last words of the comic are, I think I want to start a mutant religion. To some, I could see how it could feel jarring or out of place. But if you think about Kurt Wagner, in this instance, he's on an island. He's seeing mutants decimated worldwide. He's seeing them be reborn. And in this very moment, it's a very beautiful scene. Leinil Francis, you knocked this part out of the park. He did great on the entire comic book, but this one scene in particular, Arrow is reborn with the power to fly. He sees her reborn in flying and elevating up, almost an angelic figure, and it inspires him to want to create a religion. I could see how it could upset people. I thought it felt in character, with the story that people are changing because of Krakoa.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. Kurt Wagner is a man of faith and devout Catholic. And in many ways, I don't and I know people can view it differently. There's enough space in there, for these differences in opinion and perspective. I feel like he's trying, with new experiences and everything, he's not ditching his faith. He's trying to figure out how it can work. He's trying to
reconcile his faith with what he's seeing with his eyes.
Exactly. Which, as someone, I'm a person of faith as well. Being a Christian, we get faced with those same challenges. I think it's very authentic for him to be faced with these things and then try to reconcile it. And then naturally, Kurt. The other part of Kurt Wagner that we see is that he's someone who he's one of the most caring, if not the most caring person probably in the X-Men. He's very considerate. He's a very loving individual. So with that, if his character is to be full of faith, then of course the next thing that he would want to do is set up something where he can share that, like, hey, we have a new way that we can view each other and we can share the concern and the love that we have for each other on a broader scale if we have a place to express it and understand, which it wouldn't surprise me at all now that we're having this conversation. This is why we have OTB, Wes. He's talking about starting a religion. Inside of there seemed like the most serene and like a heavenly place even. As he's starting his religion, what wouldn't it start in the place of the where Nimrod, the Tower of Nimrod the Lesser, was in the other timeline? It seems like it'd be, I don't want to say poetic justice. I guess really it would be some incredible writing by Jonathan Hickman, but it would make perfect sense that he's like, oh, I want to start this mutant religion, and I just where can be the where should be the temple of this? Where the one place that I've went that felt the most heavenly of all places, the most serene of all places, was inside of that temple. I've got to find out how to get back in there and then open it up in a way so more people can go in, or maybe they start meeting outside. But anyway, I know we didn't even think about talking about that, but through your dialogue and reading it back now, it just made me think about that. So yeah, oh my gosh, that Jonathan Hickman, that was profound, Wes. I know you said you're not sure if you want to use the profound word. I'm using the profound word. That was quite profound. Jonathan Hickman is onto something. So
I'll say this about Hickman as well. Apparently he has he has to average so many words per comic this week. So he took one silent issue, and this comic has a lot of words. It is a heavy read, but it's definitely worth it. And the last thing, I don't want to talk about it in depth, but it is very interesting what Apocalypse says to Arrow before he strikes her down. And basically, mutants, don't get it twisted. They don't think highly of humans. They think them lesser of them. And if you're a mutant without powers, they think lesser of you too. They, you're kind of worthless until you're reborn with your mutant gifts back with you. So a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of great characterization. I think this is a wonderful comic book. Leinil Francis' use art gets completely elevated in this issue, much better than his first 3 issues that he did. I would rate that like a 3, or no, I'm not a 3, like a 4 out of 5. I would rate the characterization in this probably like a 5 out of 5, like perfect characterization. You learn so much about the characters and everything. It's not a super action-driven story, but even the plot itself and the reveals that you get, I would give it, like a 4 out of 5, or maybe a 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, probably. But this is an excellent comic book.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like Apocalypse gets to live out what he has wanted to be his purpose in many ways. Apocalypse is now a service offered to mutants to elevate them to what they now view as their rightful, the best version of themselves. And I think it is an interesting statement that if you're a mutant and you don't have powers, you're still welcomed here. You know, you get the benefits, but you are not truly who you are until you receive your powers back. And through Apocalypse, that can be achieved. I also thought it was kind of interesting how he still gave them a way out. Like, she had about 3 opportunities that he gave her. So it's almost like he didn't take pride in the killing part of it. He literally only took pride in the fact that on the other side, she came back out. I do want to give one critique.
I think he did take pride in the fact that she chose.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be struck down, to be resurrected.
I would agree with that part. And one quick thing that I do want to give one small bit of criticism, and it's quick. Throughout that part, when Kurt and Slim are talking, and you know she decides that she does want to go through with it, he runs her through, she dies. The rebirth process happened really quick, and there was a time jump that didn't totally make sense. How they were having.
Well, they went to a new location.
Did they go to a new location? Okay, that's something that
so
I wasn't able to see.
Like a kind of an arena that is the Crucible.
Right.
And when she's reborn, they're in front of that tree again.
Okay. So then that's fine. I guess what you have to reconcile in your mind is that
from her perspective, she died and she was reborn.
Okay. So then you just have to understand that they stopped that conversation and they picked it back up at the other location because it did run through. But honestly, that's the biggest critique I can come up with this book. There really wasn't much else. It really is fantastic. Characterization is great. All the way around, very, very profound book. Definitely read this, and I feel like there's going to be bigger implications going forward. So another one in the books, y'all. OTB, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to see us do this live, just make sure you go to twitch.tv/thinking_critical_YT. You can see Wes and I do it live there, and then join in on the conversation in the chat. Other than that, Wes?
X-Men, started out a little bit not great, but it's ascended. The last 3 issues were what we wanted, what we expected following House of X Powers of 10. Jonathan Hickman, has got his groove back. Definitely, one of the 2 or 3 best comic series you can find on the market. This is amazing.
Get your groove back. Get this book. If you haven't already, check it out, and then come into our Discord and talk about it with us. Also, for anybody that is already part of the Discord and people that might join in, our voice chats now, the main areas, we've taken off push to talk. So people have been going in there. I saw like up to 4 people at a time. Ash on Comics, Ring In, a few other people in there just chatting as this book came out. So as new books drop or you just want to talk, just come in there and now you can speak freely, and it's really, really fun. So come join us. Other than that, this is Skip with my man Wes, and we will see you guys next week.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.